dropped it in a bucket, touchdown!
Backer transition three, bang!
He's bends it like Beckham. Are you kidding?
Hello and welcome back for episode 43 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Second episode of the new year. It's been a good first couple of weeks of the year as far as sports go. The college football playoff has been awesome. It's NFL wildcard weekend. The NBA is near the halfway point. College hoops have been fun. You name it. We'll hit a bunch of things in a grab bag style today, but first, I'll wrap up the end of the fantasy football season. It's only right, as I guess I'd say that's the thing I've put the most time and energy into on the show so far. The best news I have to share is I won one of my leagues, 8-person full PPR. I believed in all of the tips that I gave out. I used every single one of them at some point this fantasy season, and I managed to have a perfect week over there, i.e., I made the right decisions based on my roster and didn't leave any points on the bench. I had a really great 2-week stretch in the other league, and I still came up a tiny bit short. The Vikings kicker, Will Reichard, was the last guy I had to play. He missed a 51-yarder against the Lions. That was a 6-point swing, of course. He had -1 for the miss when it would have been +5 with a make. And I lost over there by 4 points to take 4th out of 10. Wasn't thrilled, but that's what you get with rookie kickers. My MVP of the winning lineup was Jonathan Taylor. I don't know exactly why he only got so hot when the Colts were kind of staring down getting eliminated from the playoffs, but his numbers were nuts. In the last 4 weeks of the year, 117 carries, which is the most I can remember seeing from a running back in any 4-game stretch in a long time, 627 yards, 6 touchdowns, an average of 26.6 fantasy points a game. Mike Evans was one of the best in-season trades I've made in recent years. He had 5 touchdowns in the last 6 weeks, and we're just going to do a little Mike Evans appreciation post here because he's one of the best to ever do it. I loved what the Bucs did at the very end of their Week 18 game with the Saints. I've mentioned that Evans has this streak of 1,000-yard seasons every single year since he's been in the league. This is now year 11, and spoiler alert, he extended the streak. Bucs are up 8 with 36 seconds left. They had the ball on their side of the field. If they turned it over on that play, they could have missed the playoffs. They decided to throw it to Mike. Everybody knew where the ball was going to go. Everybody knew he was a handful of yards shy. And Baker Mayfield knew that he couldn't be the guy to hold Mike back from that streak. He catches a flat route, and if he was tackled right away, he might have come up 1 or 2 yards short, but he made a nice little juke, shook the first tackle, got 9 yards to put him at 1,004 on the year. That was so cool. He even missed, almost 4 games, and he still got over that mark. One of the most classy decisions ever made by a head coach and or play caller, a quarterback, you name it. I really hope Mike has a lot left in the tank too, because he should at least be a top 10 to 15 fantasy option next year if he stays healthy. That's my soapbox on him. Awesome player. I ended up having a few too many good options sometimes, and that made me try a ton of things before the trade deadline. I tried to unload Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, even Christian McCaffrey right when he came off IR. I would have loved to get one superstar and maybe get rid of 2 players of that kind of caliber. Again, just to try and simplify my roster decisions. I'd encourage everyone to do that next year, and really every year. You have to aim high in the draft, right? Get as much total value as we possibly can. But then once we've seen who's for real and who's regressed, you can make a run at a true league winner like a Jamar Chase or Jahmyr Gibbs were this year. Joe Burrow ended up being QB3 in PPR, and I didn't even want to pick him. I was scared of his lack of rushing value, but he just hit his final form this year and was insane. In a more normal year, he would have been the MVP, seeing as he led the league in yards and touchdowns. Bucky Irving was far and away the best rookie running back this year and such an awesome breakout. He was a 4th-round pick to the Bucs, but he went, somewhere between really low and undrafted in most fantasy leagues. I personally picked him up in week 6, and from then on, he scored 14 PPR points or more every week except 2, and completely stole their starting running back job from Rachaad White. 2 more guys I've sung the praises about all year long at underrated positions. The Dolphins' Jonnu Smith. How many times do I have to say it? This guy was amazing, absolutely snubbed from the Pro Bowl. That is a total shame, and the league just got that one wrong. But he was tight end 4 for the year, averaged 13.2 points a game, and he was on waivers for a lot of leagues as late as week 10. I got him on waivers in both leagues, and that was just an insane pickup at that point in the year. The tight end environment in the NFL right now is just so unproductive, except for those top couple of guys. When you get them, you have to lock them in. Then, of course, the Steelers kicker Chris Boswell wrote another chapter to his legend and was the top-scoring kicker this year. Even more impressive considering how cold and nasty the Pittsburgh weather is at the end of the season. Boswell scored 11.1 points a game, and he went 41 of 44 for the year, made the second most field goals in a season of all time. He would have needed 4 more for the all-time record, but what an incredible showing. Let that prove to you that you should take kickers and defenses seriously and draft good ones always. Now, once and for all, I promise, it's time to put fantasy football to bed for the year. I love it, and I renewed my interest in playing so much this year. I hope to instill that in other people too, and give tons and tons of tips next year. Now on to some MLB free agent news again. The first one makes me so sad because I'm delusional and I had held out hope on this guy for so long. Justin Verlander has, for some strange reason, chosen the San Francisco Giants to continue his career, and conceivably finish it out, one would think. His best days are behind him, right? That's not news, like every other soon-to-be 42-year-old pitcher. What I held out hope for, though, that the Tigers would come calling and make it the most beautiful reunion, no luck. He won the Rookie of the Year in Detroit. He won the Cy Young in Detroit twice. He won MVP in Detroit. He threw 2 no-hitters with Detroit. What more motivation did he need? The Tigers are objectively a better fit. The Giants have a more established pitching staff, and Detroit has holes and question marks everywhere beyond Tarik Skubal. The Tigers won 86 games and they made the playoffs. They even knocked out the Astros in the wild card. The Giants won 80 games and they missed the playoffs. The Tigers are the youngest team in the league. They had the most rookies this year. Their payroll is next to nothing. They have all this salary cap to make this happen. And Verlander's deal was only 1 year, $15 million. Any and every way you slice it, I am gutted by this. The man starts 17 games last year with Houston at the age of 41. Not quite unheard of, but close. 5.48 ERA. Strikeout rate is down. Walk rate is up. And yet, apparently, he was a hot enough commodity. Why the Giants? I guess I hope he can get back to form a little bit, but not too much or I'll get even more salty. He's still going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. It should still be close to unanimous, and I think he's the best pitcher of our era, but it might put something of a stain on his career, really, if he really struggles and goes out with a whimper. Now, speaking of Tigers, though, they continue to be really in the spotlight this offseason, which is cool. In addition to being linked to a bunch of the other big free agents, they did re-sign Tarik Skubal. Sorta. What they really did was delay his inevitable, insane contract extension by arbitration. This is another weird and maybe kind of archaic system that's a bit unique. I'll do my best to break it down. Players have to accrue 6 years of MLB service time in order to fully avoid the arbitration process and hit full quote-unquote free agency. Basically, if they have more than 3 but less than 6 years of service time, then when their rookie deal runs out, the player and the club negotiate over salaries that are roughly in line with what similar players of the same age have gotten in recent years. If the two sides can't agree on a figure, they meet in front of a panel of arbiters that'll then decide which of the 2 salary numbers the contract will be for, either the player's number or the club's number. In Skubal's case, he gets $10.15 million. I would guess that that's the team's offer, but I don't know. That deal only covers this coming year, and that means Skubal will actually be up for arbitration one more time next offseason, unless they give him the massive multi-year extension. They're going to have to do that eventually. I don't know how long you want to keep putting it off, but the price tag keeps going up. It is really not negotiable, especially if he repeats anything near what he did this year with winning the Triple Crown and the Cy Young. Arbitration is a big deal, so much so that it motivates most teams to agree on contracts way before the deadline for it hits, which was January 9th this year. For the older and the more experienced market, it's looking like this right now. Max Scherzer is one of the top names still out there in free agency. He's also on the wrong side of 40, which of course you almost never see, but he is one of the best of our era. Nolan Arenado with the Cardinals, Alex Bregman with the Astros, Pete Alonso with the Mets. None of those guys have re-signed yet, though, and some of them, the best players of our era roughly, they're going to be moved. I don't know the who, what, when, where. Even in some cases, I don't know the why, but I am truly scanning it every single day. I never really do this with the MLB. Pitchers and catchers won't even report to spring training for another month plus. That's just how generational this free agent class has been. Now we'll move on to the NFL's Black Monday. You might have heard the term. It refers to the first Monday after the regular season ends. And most of the coaches who don't make the playoffs are on the chopping block at that point. I had predicted back around Thanksgiving that there would be 8 head coach openings to fill. We're at 6 so far, with most of the familiar suspects being gone, but a few of them probably unfairly. Let's talk about them. I'll go in order of the length of their tenure, shortest to longest, because how many times this year did I say that all the first-time guys were going to be safe? Naturally, because I said it, you knew it couldn't be right. For as much as the Patriots love Gerard Mayo as a player, it seems like they equally hated him as a coach. Players said things like he would randomly change practice plans and philosophies, and he made that one really bad post-game quote. I forget if I mentioned it when it happened or not, but after a loss to the Dolphins mid-season, he said, "Look, once those guys cross the white lines, there's nothing I can do for them." It's one of those quotes that when you take it out of context, the question everybody wanted to ask is, wait a minute, you mean to tell me you're making no adjustments ever? And I'm sure that's not what he meant. I'm sure he meant that, we can only prepare as much as we have time for during the practice week. And then once they step out there, I'm not the one making the tackles, making the blocks, throwing the football. Yeah, it still sounds bad, though, in a vacuum. Mayo walked into a situation there where he had Drake May, the rookie QB, drafted 3rd overall. He showed a lot of flash, but he didn't even get to start until week 6. They had bad, predictable offensive play calling because they didn't have any major weapons. They couldn't stretch the field at all. Their offensive line was laughable. Now, should their defense have been ranked better than 23rd, seeing as Mayo himself was a very good linebacker and was supposed to bring in this more physical style? Yes, of course. But they had injuries. They had a pure lack of talent. Just read the Patriots roster top to bottom and nothing jumps out at you. I think Gerard Mayo got the most raw deal of all the fired coaches, unless he really wasn't taking it seriously, which is possible. Now, I've been calling the Raiders' Antonio Pierce a first-year head coach, but I didn't really explain the caveat to it. Pierce was the interim last year after they fired Josh McDaniels mid-season. From that point, he actually went 5-4 last year, which wasn't so bad, but 4-13 this year, so 9-17 combined. It's bad, but again, I fail to see why the team would expect a better record than that. From a man coaching in his 3rd year in the NFL, that's not a ton of experience, and he had only coached in high school and college a little bit before that. He had a terrible team all around him. He wasn't the one missing on most of their draft picks for the last 10-plus years. He wasn't the one who was, not spending big on useful free agents. They had 3 below-average quarterbacks that all had turnover issues. He's probably the second most hosed of all the fired coaches. I've already been over the 3 mid-season firings. You had Robert Saleh with the Jets, Dennis Allen with the Saints, and Matt Eberflus with the Bears. The last one on the list so far is the Jaguars' Doug Peterson. He won the Super Bowl with really kind of a super team, the 2017 Eagles team that everybody kind of forgets. They beat the Patriots. He came to the Jaguars in 22 after his contract ended with the Eagles, and he actually won a playoff game that first year, which was mildly impressive. And he started 2023 8-3, but it's been nothing but letdowns since then. You can't lose 18 out of 23 games in any stretch ever. You're just toast when that happens, especially with a team that should be able to compete in a weak division. He was a really sharp offensive coordinator, though, under Andy Reid with the Eagles. I tip my cap to him for what he did there, and sometimes called plays for the Jags in 2022, but then he gave that up the next year, and things didn't go well. You got to kind of read the signs there and do what works. If he had to reclaim the play-calling duties, And if that then led to wins, you have to stick with it. I think he would definitely make a good coordinator again for somebody next year, and I think there's a very good chance that that happens. But the team had no choice this year. Doug Peterson absolutely earned this one. Now, I've so rarely touched on college football this year, but I've finally been really dialed in ever since the 12-team playoffs started, and I'll just dabble a little bit right now. Like I said, grab bag this week. The semifinalists are all college football blue bloods, as now it's going to be Texas or Ohio State advancing on Friday night. Ohio State dismantled the number one, the undefeated Oregon, who had steamrolled pretty much everybody, won the Big Ten championship their first year playing in the conference. Texas's only 2 losses on the year were both to Georgia, who's now been knocked off, and Texas has 6 wins versus ranked teams. Ohio State, they're Ohio State, right? You might have heard of them. As much as I hate it, they have the second most wins in the history of college football, just behind Michigan, 8 national championships of their own. If what Ohio State put on film in the Oregon game holds up, I think they're going to absolutely cruise to a 9th national championship. You've probably heard of their freshman receiver, Jeremiah Smith, by now. If he were draft eligible, he would probably be the number 1 pick, and he's 19 years old. In 2 playoff games, 13 catches, 290 yards, and 4 touchdowns against mostly guys that are going to be drafted, and they're 3 or 4 years older. He's 6'3", 215, absolutely made in a lab. He might have some of the best preseason odds a player's ever had to win the Heisman next year. The worst part for Texas and possibly Notre Dame, should those two meet in the championship, Ohio State has the number 1 defense by scoring and yardage in the country. The best part of the 12-team playoff has been the unpredictability, though. I still expect Ohio State is going to get it done, but on Monday the 20th, we'll find out for sure, and not until then. Finally, I want to briefly touch on the wildfires in LA. I'm even willing to watch the national news to learn about it. It's at the point that it's even threatening sports. Of course, I understand the priorities at play here, and safety is the bigger concern by leaps and bounds, right? But we do cover sports here. The Rams-Vikings wildcard games now move to Glendale, Arizona, where the Cardinals play. The Lakers and Hornets had a game postponed on this Thursday, the 9th, and they have another one scheduled for this Saturday, the 11th, that I would imagine is also in jeopardy. Celebrity homes are burning down like crazy, including the Lakers head coach, J.J. Redick's. Plus, I'm sure that the mental toll and the recovery efforts are kind of months from being fully realized. Obviously, you wish the best for everybody affected there. A more somber note, but that's everything I have for the week. I still hope you like the new intro-outro. You know how the other stuff goes. Whatever else catches my eye is always on the table. And you can always feel free to hit me on my socials if you have an idea for me. Hope you like the real variety. There's just a ton of stuff going on right now, so why not try a little bit of everything? This has been episode 43 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
He dropped it in a bucket. Touchdown!
Becker transition 3, bang!
He's bends it like Beckham. Are you kidding?